figured out what I wanted, bought all this stuff, and then it took me about another year, and it was kind of just, well, I just want to capture stories that, you know, whether it's you or Father Gruba, whoever, it's like there's so many cool things out there that race fans never hear, and just, you know, things about people that I don't even know. And it's like, you know, when I just sat down with Greg McCarnes, is like, I had no clue the McCarnes family came from Ohio. It was like awesome.
Yeah, who knew?
Yeah, who knew exactly? And
Right.
it's just kind of awesome to hear that. And like, yeah, how did you guys even? What made you want to be a promoter and a general manager and a track owner? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, and with McCarnes, I didn't know that. I didn't know he was from Ohio. I didn't get to watch the whole podcast yet. I watched probably half of it on Friday when we were getting the car ready to go, because I knew we were doing this. So I thought, I better at least brush up on how it's going to go, you know.
Sure.
So then when I was watching it, and I thought, well, then I wanted to see if his dad was the guy who kind of started that Tri-R motorsports thing. That's it was before Artco, and I was really little. But they had a couple races like at Wausau, maybe one or two. We've got some pictures of them. Like, I think your grandpa won one, and their Channel 7 was there, and Mark Zelich was there. And there's a picture of it that comes out on Facebook every once in a while of Mark Zelich interviewing Tom in Victory Lane at State Park. Okay. And it was I think it was a Tri-R motorsports thing, and I think it had something to do with, I think Greg's dad, John, might have had something to do with the start of that, and that might have spun off into the Artco thing. I'm not sure.
Okay. No, I've never even heard of that.
I know Kurt Luma knows it, because he would tell us that story at Sandy's when it'd be like, we'd go to Sandy's after the races, and then I would, like, Kurt would sit on one side of Ron, and then Tootie, and then I would sit next to them, and then Margaret would sit next to me, and we'd have beers and BS, and Tootie would have her Pabst, Ron would have his Miller, and Kurt didn't drink. So, but we'd sit there forever just talking racing, you know, and stuff like that at Sandy's. Sandy was running it then, and then he had Barbie was bartending then, and yeah, it was a good time. There's a lot of history. I mean, you know, going way back to like Walbeck, you know, guys like that. When Ronnie, I think, started in the late 50s.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't remember the exact year that he got going, but yeah, definitely right around there.
Oh, yeah. And then, then I didn't know that Ronnie, you know, then they had told me that Ronnie and Tootie were actually from Wausau, the east side of Wausau, over by where Marcus's lived, and Breitenfelds are out there, Stankowski's. Sure. There's a whole pocket of racers that grew up on farms out there. I mean, a ton of them. Haze's were out there. Okay. That's where their homesteads were from that area. Okay. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, all those racers right in that little area.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a hotbed.
Yeah, like it was like Marshall Hill to the east. Okay. I was on the east side of the river. So it's pretty nuts. Okay. Yeah. And then were you and your family, Mackesy's, right from Wausau too always, or is that? My dad grew up in Marathon, or actually on a farm on the corner of N&O.
N&O. Did he grow up calling it Meriton? Because I had a grandma that lived in Marathon County, whatever, in Meriton. That's what they always called it, Meriton.
Yeah, Meriton. It's funny that we live so close to Marathon that they actually have their own language there, because it's so heavy German. Okay. It's got a huge German population, and there's a whole bunch of them there, and they have their own. It's their own lingo, you know, like when they say Kraut-Kramer, you know, they're really blooms aren't blooms, they're blums. Okay. You know, I mean, it's just their own language.
Interesting. Yeah.
You know, motorcycle is a motorcycle.
My grandma spoke just like that. Yep. Gosh, that's too funny. Yep. That's not just her. That's the culture up 30 minutes north of here, 40 minutes north of here.
Yep. Yeah. And for me, it's only 10 minutes west of where I lived, and in Rib Mountain where we grew up. You know, but yeah. So Dad was from a farm on N&O, and then he got the race bug from his cousins. Okay. That they lived in Milwaukee, and he went to Hales Corners with them and got the bug, and then he went with them to State Park like in 62, and then after that he was hooked.
Okay.
And then he started in 65.
65. Okay.
Yeah. So and then his uncle lived next door, was a machinist and could build anything. He was like a Jimmy Bach. He ran a lathe. He could weld, back when not everybody, had a welder in their garage. He had all that stuff. So that's where they worked out of, out of his shop when they started,
Okay. So then what year were you born in?
1970.
1970. Okay, so your dad got rolling in racing before you were born then. Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
And then like my mom is from Richland Center, which is about an hour west of Madison.
Yep.
But then her brother raced back in the 60s. Yeah. And then her parents my grandparents liked racing. And then when she was young, they would go to like Madison and the county fairs down there. And I remember my grandpa talking about like Rich Bickle Sr.
Sure.
winning a bunch of races down there, and Johnny McNamara and some of those guys from that era racing down there. So, so she got into racing through that. And then Mom and Dad actually met at a bar behind the Dell Speedway. My mom was a bartender there, and my dad went there to watch the races, and then they started dating, and he packed her up and moved her to Wausau.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny how some of that stuff all comes together. That's cool.
Yeah. And I think the bar might still be standing behind the racetrack, because there was like 2 or 3 bars right in a row there behind the track. One is, I can't think of the name of it now, but it's we had a meeting there. I think it's called Sandy's.
Okay.
And, Steve Wall lives across the road. But anyways, we had a couple CWRA meetings there. Got great breakfast there, and they served some cocktails in there and stuff like that. But it's right. The old pit gate used to come in the back off of 12 there.
Yep.
Now you got to go around and come in on the south side off of Smith Road. But, yeah, we used to trail in the back way. I think you can still sneak out that way, because some people, when they leave early, come out the –
Yeah, you can go out the back now. They'll let you out the back.
Oh, they will? Okay,
yeah. I think earlier this year, I think I went out the back when I left. Yeah, and I didn't realize how close it was to the road, and I was like, man, this is where they used to sneak out. Yeah.
Yep.
So then when your dad getting going racing, was he was running late models then, probably when you were born, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And
then do you remember just being hooked on racing right away, going to the racetrack when you were just a little guy, or were you not going to the races right away when you were a little guy?
My mom took me there when I was 4 days old.
Okay.
So I've always been at the races. I mean, I don't remember doing, much else when I was really little.
Okay.
But going to the racetrack, go to State Park, stuff like that. I was 4 days old. So my first memories are probably like when I was 3, somewhere in there, of at the racetrack, things going on, and different people and drivers and stuff like that. Yeah.
Now, and then your dad, he must have been going to the races several times a week during those days, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. He'd run, State Park on Thursdays.
Okay.
Plover was on Sundays then.
Yeah.
He'd run those 2 all the time, and then sometimes he'd go to the Dells. Like in the 80s, then we were doing Wednesdays at West Salem, Thursdays at State Park. We didn't do Fridays at Madison. The other CWRA guys did.
Okay.
And the dad would do Saturdays at the Dells. And then on Sundays, then they would do Kaukauna, the red, white, and blue, during the day. And then at night, drive back to Sands and race there on Sunday night.
Okay.
So they do 2 in one day. I think John Bovee told me that Tom and those guys would sometimes do the Minnesota Fair stuff during Labor Day weekend, and might come back and race at Plover on a Sunday night. And then I think they might have went back then on Monday and race. You'd have to ask him, but
okay, yeah. I will. Yeah, that one that's a hike in a day that I hadn't heard about. Yeah.
Back in the 70s, Boomer and Marv, instead of running at Plover, were driving over to Elko and racing because it paid better.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Must have been paying better if it was worth the drive to go do it.
And I think they might have gotten Shodo too.
Okay.
So
yeah, that was popular back then.
Yep. They get a couple guys from Wisconsin to take on the Minnesota guys, Border Challenge, all that kind of thing. So yeah.
Oh, That's cool. Yeah, no, once again, I never heard of guys making that trip instead.
Yeah. Yep.
Gosh, that's cool. And now, growing up, how many siblings do you have?
Just my brother Wayne.
Just your brother Wayne. Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't know if there was anyone else. Okay,
My big brother.
big brother. Yeah.
He's younger, but he's my big brother.
Now, I mean, having been born and gone to the racetrack right away, did you have any other interests growing up, or was it just gearhead from the beginning and that's all it was?
I always liked football,
Okay.
baseball. Always loved those two sports. Boxing. In the 70s, boxing was huge.
Okay.
You know, Ali, Ken Norton, Joe Frazier, George Foreman. I mean, Larry Holmes, Ron Lyle. I mean, those guys, and they were on Wide World of Sports all the time, or they'd have special events on ABC. You know, I love that. I loved Ali.
Did you box?
I would have wanted to try to, but I was no fighter. I'm too scared.
Sure.
You know, I don't like pain at all. And then, you know, you have a brother like Wayne who could beat the crap out of you. You get beat up a couple times, and then it's over.
Yeah, that's when you said you're interested in boxing, I was like, I never knew you as a fighter, so I didn't know if you had boxed in high school or something like that. Okay.
Couple black eyes, couple bloody noses, and that's it for me.
Just the normal stuff of growing up in the 80s that occurred.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
We did have boxing gloves. They were Sugar Ray Leonard boxing gloves. And you got to stand on a like a ski board, and it had a pole on it, and then you would punch this punching bag, you know, and it was like a little ball, and then that got boring after a while, so you had to punch each other with it.
Right.
You know, and a couple beatings of that, and then it was the gloves got put away.
Yeah. Then did you were you growing up working on your dad's race cars as soon as you kind of could?
Oh yeah. My first memories of him are like working on his 77 Firebird.
Okay.
That was one of the earlier models of like plastic noses or rubber. They were rubber actually back then. It had a rubber.
Really?
It was a Trans Am nose on it and a Trans Am or bumper cover, but it was rubber.
Okay.
And I think at that time, Fagers out of Minnesota was a dirt business that built cars and had some body parts that they would sell that were aftermarket.
Okay.
And that had him on it.
Okay.
I remember monkeying around in Dad's garage with that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that was probably, well, he had a 69 Camaro before that. I remember helping him clean parts with that. We had a little container that he'd put gas in, and then I could go sit over there and play that to get out, stay out of the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my first recollections of helping out.
I'm sure. Were you wearing gloves back then when you were cleaning parts up in gas?
No.
No.
You got splattered with a lot of it.
Yeah.
Some of it wound up in your mouth, in your eyes, Nobody got too excited about it back then. Well, I just saw a thing on YouTube the other day about dangerous things that we did when we were kids. We used to have these plastic balls. It was a cement you would put on the end of a straw, and then you would blow on it. And it would make this big balloon.
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
Well, it was made out of like all kinds of toxic chemicals. I mean, it was nasty.
Interesting.
And we'd go to the hardware store and they'd sell it, like they would sell gum, and it was a toy, and here, this stuff we were breathing in was horrible. So, I mean, that's just how it was in the 70s and 80s. It was just this nasty stuff.
Yeah. Now they even say drinking out of a hose ain't good for you, but
we were going down that rabbit hole the other day, me and a guy at work, I mean, here we're supposed to do all this stuff that's healthy for you, and drinking and smoking's bad and whatever else. But yet then I come to find out that the water that I've been drinking at my house now might have PFAS in it. And some of the neighbors actually have a class action lawsuit against 3M because they're north of us. They think they're poisoning or had been dumping stuff in the water for years.
Oh, geez.
And we got a spring right behind the house, so you'd think you'd have fresh water, right? And Perry Rediker just passed away this last week, and he lives kitty corner from me. And I never know that he ever smoked, and he drank very little, and he was always a healthy kind of guy.
Sure.
Him and his wife walked their dogs and stuff. So the only The only thing that would maybe give him cancer is he built motors, and you could say maybe the chemicals from that or breathing in that kind of thing. And he raced for a bunch of years, so maybe the racing part of it, the exhaust. But outside of that, there's nothing you can attribute it to, you know, of the normal stuff. He wasn't overweight. I mean, you know, he's fit as a fiddle. So, yeah, that's crazy. And he was only 67.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, sad. Yeah.
Oh, terrible, terrible. Yeah, it's so. Yeah, so back in the 70s, then there was, you know, no masks, you know, none of that stuff. It just,
right.
You know, well, the the truck that my dad had was a big GMC truck.
Okay.
You know, with the back on it.
Yep.
I don't know, it was a 3/4 ton or one. I think it was probably 1 ton, and it only fit 3 people in it. You know, it had a stick shift in it. Well, the floorboards, you could see through them. I mean, you could smell the exhaust and the heat from the engines coming through it, and you know. But those guys back then too were, you know, they were men. They were a man's man.
Yeah.
All the way, you know what I mean? They raced, drank beer, you know. Some of them smoked. You know, that was a man's man.
Yeah, that was all very common.
Oh, yeah, big time.
Now, when, you know, your dad was going racing, and, you know, as soon as you could, I mean, were you, because how long did your dad race for?
Oh, gosh, he raced from 65 until 2000, I think.
Okay, so he did race that. Okay.
He had a couple years off. When I started to race, then he quit for a few years, and then my brother bought a bomber car, and they had like an old timers race at the end of the night, and my dad raced it and won it, and then I think it re-triggered the bug, and then the next year he was back racing, and then he raced until 2000. Then he gave my brother the car to race, and then my brother started running a super.
Okay.
But yeah, so he raced until 2000. So
okay, and then, you know, obviously you were going to the racetrack all the time as a kid. But then, I mean, did it get to the point where you were always going with him to all of his races, helping him? Were you his pit crew essentially?
One of his pit guys, yeah, for sure. I started going into pit when they would let us go into pits.
Yeah.
You couldn't get into pits.
Yeah, I was curious if you were having to sneak in early when you're.
We tried at Kaukauna, but they had actually security at the gates that would actually come into the camper and search around in there. Yeah.
No kidding.
So me and my brother tried to hide in the bathroom, and they came right in there, opened it up. And you guys got to get out.
Yeah, get a better hiding spot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I heard stories about Jim Weber. I guess he was a carpenter, would actually build like hiding spots for his pit crew and his kids so he wouldn't have to pay for them to get in. I guess he had all kinds of compartments for stuff to hide in there.
That's cool.
Yeah.
At what point did you start thinking, hey, I'm gonna race at some point, or did you kind of like always know, like, yeah, I'm gonna race at some point, or when did that really start crossing into your mind?
Probably right from the beginning.
Yeah.
Most of my toys were Hot Wheels, Matchbox cars, Tyco Track. You know, that kind of thing. And then anytime we could get on a go-kart somewhere, you know, if you roll with my dad anywhere, it was, you know, if we were on the highway, there was no speed limit for him. It's wide open or nothing. You know what I mean? He'd go 75 and a 25. On the highway, if the car could do 100, it was 100.
Yeah.
You know, we had a Plymouth Fury 3 had a big 360 in it. I mean, and that thing, he would haul ass with that thing. I mean, he would. Can we swear on here?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So
Anything goes here.
He would fly there with, yeah, you know, the camper was wide open all the time. There was speed. I don't know how many speeding tickets he had back in the day. And well, all those guys were that way, too. I think they were always on the borderline of losing their license from speeding tickets.
Sure.
You know, back when I don't know if they still do it now, but they used to take points off your driver's license.
Yeah.
You know, I've got minimal tickets, so I have no clue. Well, they made it more expensive too. I mean,
right.
A speeding ticket now is, I don't know, $230, and in a speed zone it's double that or whatever. I have no clue. So
yeah, I've actually been pretty fortunate too. I haven't had one since I was 17, so it's been a long time.
Yeah. When you're young like that too, I mean, you're always pushing the limit, and then it takes one snap like that, and it's like, okay, that's a little expensive. Or I think it was a lot cheaper back then.
Yeah.
I don't know how insurance played into it back then either.
Right.
Or if they even had it for those guys,
Right,
they might not have bought it.
Yeah, and I'm sure they were never in a hurry to get to a racetrack and running late or anything.
Oh, all the time, yeah. Well, then we had to pick up the crew, like going to West Salem. We'd pick up Myram Lenz, who was with us forever. We'd pick him up on the way there, and then, you had your stops. And then, of course, you didn't have 51 wasn't 4 lanes all the way through. It only went 4 lanes in the 80s to Highway 21. So a lot of you found other ways to get there, and you'd blow stop signs and stuff like that. So we'd find different ways to
allegedly.
get
there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The 173, that was wide open all the time. Yeah, for sure.
Kind of before we start talking about when you eventually started racing, when you were going to the racetrack when you were young, maybe besides your dad, who did you kind of cling to as a driver, during those times?
Oh, your grandpa all the way. Oh yeah. Tom was my guy. I would ride with your grandpa from State Park to my dad's bar.
Okay, I knew your parents had a bar, yeah.
Yep, and it's still there. It's the Hammer Down Bar on Highway B.
Okay.
But it was right on the way home for the Rapids guys, the Rapids, Rudolph, Vesper guys, because then they could go down Highway O, the back way from State Park. They would go out the west gate, go around the mountain, and then go down instead of going all the way around, and then go down Highway O. O would take you to 153 or however you wanted to get down to 10 to 34.
Okay.
Would pull you into Rapids or keep going, to Vesper. Bach he knew all the county highways. I mean, that guy was a master of the county. That's a straight shot, and you can go. I mean, he had it all figured out, how to get to these places. And I tell Stretch that now. He goes, what way are you going home? And I said, well, I'm taking the Jimmy Bach way. And he knows that coming home from Tomah or West Salem, it's 173. That's the Jimmy Bach way,
Okay.
173 to V to X to A, Now most of those county roads have stop signs on them, where before they were, you kind of guess at your own, discretion to go through them or not. So you look both ways. And if the crops were down.
Yeah, as I say, the trees are probably a little shorter back then.
Oh, yeah. And if the crops are down, if it's a good year for corn, it gets pretty high. You can't be running it. But, yeah. And Jim was running behind a lot at a lot of the races back in the day.
Sure.
But, yeah, your grandpa was one that I took to, and I would ride with him from Dad's racetrack or from State Park Speedway to Dad's bar.
Okay.
And then they would eat there. I'd sit on your grandpa's lap and eat some of his food, his French fries.
I remember my grandma telling me that. Yeah.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
And what made you cling to him? Just because he was winning and stopping at the bar, or?
That was one of the things. And then another one is that he was good to me. He took me in. He had time for me. Here's a guy that wins 67 features in a year. He's a rock star, and he has time for me. I'm 5 years old. What's not to like? He's let me sit on his lap. I mean, I got pictures of me and him at Dad's bar of like a trophy I won, and he's kneeling down with me with this trophy.
Okay.
And he's in his Hoosier gear, his Super America suit. I mean, he's everywhere, and he's got time for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And at the time, I wasn't that big on Trickle because he was so popular that he was, busy. But he catered to everybody. But your grandpa treated me special.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'd ride with him to the bar and stuff like that. He had a AMC Gremlin.
Yep.
We'd ride in that. Then I was joking with him one time. He goes, and then he had a Pacer too, So I don't remember riding the Pacer, but I do remember the Gremlin.
Yeah. I think part of that Gremlin still might be out at the farm, but.
I believe that. Yeah. I believe that.
It's easy to believe he didn't get rid of a lot.
No. He definitely was sentimental on a lot of that stuff. Oh. And one thing about your grandpa is I think one thing that attracted me to him is that he was all those guys back then were their own men. Even though they had the same ideas in mind of racing and how to go fast and stuff like that, they all were their own personalities.
Yeah.
If you get Marv in a room, he's got his personality. Tom had his personality. You know, Jimbo had his personality. Trickle had his personality. My dad, Ronnie Byers, they all were different. You know, they didn't try to conform to be, you know, they didn't want to follow the mainstream or
the societal norm or something like that.
No, there was no norm for them. Their norm was what they did.
Right.
Yeah. You know, I'm dressing like this, and I don't care if the style is to wear this. This is how I'm going, you know.
Yeah.
You know, just it was a different deal where now everybody copycats the next guy and the next guy, you know.
Right.
They walked their own walk. Yeah, they were special cats. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's no doubt. Yeah, I mean, you really get to start to know some guys or, you know, hear stories, and it's, yeah, I would definitely agree that's the thing you hear a lot. You know, there's, and they're all friends, but very, you know, so many of them are all friends, but very much their own individual person.
Oh, yeah. You know, if you'd talk to them about something, and they'd be like, well, that guy or whatever, because he was so much different than them, you know.
Yeah.
But they also accepted that person was different. They didn't, like, put them down for it, or, you know, they weren't, you know, I don't know how to describe it. Because they weren't societal normal, they didn't get excited about it, or, you know, that kind of thing, where today it's, you know, food if you do this or do that, you know. But I guess, you know, back then, too, like Gino Harches used to always say, the only thing worse back then of being a race person was a motorcycle person.
Okay.
You know, the people that were into the motorcycle racing and stuff like that were looked down upon or were more rebellish.
Sure.
You know, than say the racers were.
Gotcha.
You know.
Yeah. What year did you end up getting into your first race car then?
I got into my dad's car in 1987.
1987, okay.
Well, I raced 2 bomber races before that, or they were enduros back then.
Okay.
So I got a car from a guy named Ed Bernowski. He owned Ed's Automatic. It was a transmission shop, and he had raced way back in the 50s with like Ernie Durr and guys like that. He was one of the first guys probably to race at State Park when it first opened. It was Boston Speedway back then.
Okay.
But then he had a used car lot too, so he had some junk there in the lot that he'd sell or whatever, and then we'd be like, hey, can we take this car and turn it into a race car? Yeah, sure, you know. So I took the first car I had actually was an AMC Matador that me, my brother, and Troy Ingman, you know, knocked the windows out of it and whatever, and took it to Tomahawk for an Enduro in 1985. We painted it ourselves. Troy's mom and dad, Dave and Carol Ingman, painted it. Okay. But we had to paint it green because their favorite color was green. And then back then, when you did an Enduro, whatever your entry number was, that's what your number was on the car.
Okay.
So then it was 66. I only made like 13 laps, and it got rolled over. And so then we thought we'd try it again in the fall. And then we had an Impala that was better and it ran a lot better. But that one only made, I don't know, maybe 50 laps, something like that. And the line pinch with the tranny fluid run into it, and it crapped out. So that was the end of it.
When you're rolling over right away, did somebody roll you over, or did you?
Yeah, a guy out of Merrill, his name was Harvey Gropp. Some of the people might remember him. He was a rough character.
Okay.
And
I've said it before on here, I always love Tomahawk Speedway stories. They're always seem to be interesting.
Oh, yeah. Harvey was a rough character. And he got into me in turn 1, and it just kept pushing me. Well, that Tomahawk on the edge of the track back then had to implement tires.
Okay.
The small ones coming out so you wouldn't drive on the grass. And then I hooked one of those, and then flipped it over on his roof. And those cars back then either didn't have like any roll cage or anything like that. They were just street cars that you smashed the windows out of. And
okay, so no additional bars whatsoever inside.
No, nothing.
Okay.
No. Matter of fact, Rick Hayes actually got a car that day or that day before, and then took it from Hilltop Auto Wrecking, Junkyard Jeffy, drove it from his place to the racetrack. They took a chain, smashed the windows out of it, and he raced it that day. They actually somebody took a
that's awesome.
paintbrush, and I don't remember what his number was, and painted whatever his entry number was on it, and it was still wet, and he went out and ran it until it died. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, back when you could go barrier to entry was real low.
Oh yeah. It was fun. It was crazy. And then I started racing a late model then in '87.
Okay.
My dad had hurt his back at work and had was out. And the car was just sitting there. And I went to the track, and Dad wasn't even going to watch. He would just sit at home. And you know, there's a lot of racers that aren't fans either. I mean, they're fans of racing, but if they're not racing, they don't go.
Yeah.
You know, and or they're not good fans. And so he stayed home, and I was standing at State Park behind the flag stand, actually, in the opening there. You know, as you come down the hill at Wausau, had those openings underneath that you could walk through.
Okay, yep.
To go to the bleachers. Well, I was standing there watching the races, and one of Dad's friends, Darrell Landreth, was sitting there with his brother, and he was friends with my dad, and I heard him say, "Where's Bob been?" You know, you'd think his boy would race, and I don't know if he knew I was standing there or if you know what I mean. But that got my goat. So that night I went home. I said, "Dad, that car's just sitting there. Why don't you put me in?" And he goes, "I'll think about it," you know, which usually meant no. So then I kept hounding him about it, and he goes, "All right, we'll go out there on Thursday. We'll let you practice it. If you do okay, we'll let you race it." So we called Myron Lenz up. He was Dad's tire guy, and he said, "All right, I'll come out and we'll get going on this thing." And because Dad couldn't do much with his back being bad.
Okay.
So I went out there with a couple of my friends, and I think Scott Thompson was with us, a good friend of mine. And Jim Nielsen, a good friend of mine, was racing then. And so I went out there and made some laps at the track. And Dad goes, "Yeah, you're doing all right, you know." So and Myron says to me, "Well, I would time you with a stopwatch, but an hourglass would probably work better, you know." So he let me race it then, and that's how I started. Slow. I mean, really slow, but.
do you remember what the first race was like for you?
Yeah, scared, nervous, very nervous. You know, here I'm getting into the super late model with all this Wagner motor, with all this horsepower on Wausau.
Sure.
Wausau was the old pavement back that they had laid down in the 70s, I think. So it's 87, and it was pretty wore out. And back then, Phil owned a concrete company, P&H Concrete. Well, whenever there was a hole in the track, he'd patch it with the concrete. So through 3 and 4, right in the middle where that new bump is now, there must be a spring underneath there, whatever brings that up. There was a concrete slab there. I don't know about like that. When you'd hit it, it was still another like a whoop-de-doo. But so it was really rough. And but yeah, I remember going out there, and man, I just thought I couldn't even keep up with the slowest car in the back. So I thought if I just keep driving harder, I'll get him. And I kept driving harder and harder until I went off the track. And there wasn't walls around it then. It was just sandbanks. So I wound up and over the top of the sandbank in 3 and 4. I didn't get down to the pond.
As I say, at least you didn't get to the pond, yeah.
No, but I got down there pretty far enough. There was a little lip there that actually held the car up there. So that was my first race. And sand everywhere. I mean, sand come in the car. I had sand all over me. I got home, we had shower and sand. I mean, it was quite a learning experience because I thought it was a lot easier.
Okay.
You know, from watching and helping my dad, it's like, wow, this can't be that hard. Well, found out how hard it really was, you know.
Because before that point, how many times did you really race the enduro before you hopped in it?
Just 2.
Oh, really? Oh, so just 2 times you're in the enduro and then to the late model.
Yep, yeah. So looking back on it, I wish I would have had some more time, like in a lower division, probably to get a little more used to being aggressive and a little more rubbing and stuff like that. Where we're going into the late model right away, you start rubbing with guys a little bit, stuff can happen pretty fast.
Right.
You know. So, but yeah, that's how it started.
And then how did it really progress from there? How long did it take you to really start to feel a little more comfortable? Was it races or was it, several years at that point?
It was a couple of years.
Okay.
I raced the end of '87, and then I raced Plover opened back up in '88. So then my dad said, well, that's a safe place. We'll let you race there. I'll race. His back was better than in '88.
Okay.
I'll race in '88 at State Park, and then when Plover opens up, you can go down there and we'll give it a spin. So then I raced down there, got a little more comfortable, won my first heat race. Then he said, okay, in '89, then I'll run Wausau. We'll split the bills, and then you can run Plover. So I'd run Plover on Friday nights. So as the year progressed a little bit in '89, I started to get a little more comfortable, run better in the semi. Back then we had a full semi feature, sometimes a consi. Started running better and then getting more comfortable. I would get tires. Back then you could just buy 4 tires. There was no tire rule. You could buy as many as you wanted. So then I'd buy used tires from your grandpa. I'd go to him and he'd be like, just give me $5 a tire. So it'd be $20 for the set. And then I'd buy them from him and go race them. And then I'd make like $92 in the semi for 4th. So I thought, that's a good deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm getting these tires that only got one night on them. And I can race them tonight. I can race them another night, And my dad had his own tire program going at Wausau. So,
okay.
Did
you end up, did Plover seem to be a track that was just kind of easier to get up to speed at versus State Park, or did you not really have a preference at that point?
Plover was a lot easier. There was a lot less smashing.
Okay.
Wrecking, where Wausau is so narrow.
Yeah, a little more tight, yeah.
And I think around that same time, then they were putting the walls up.
Okay.
So then it was, a lot scarier.
Because at that point, did they have the inside wall at State Park too?
That coming then around that same time too. I think the insurance company wanted it, because we were parking in the infield, not on the outside of the track.
Right.
So we were in the infield, so they didn't, they wanted to keep everybody, the cars on the track and not in the infield, or they didn't want them flying out either.
Yeah.
That scared the insurance companies of cars leaving. Oh, your grandpa left off of turn one night when we were there, and they actually had to drag him back in off of, I think it's Whippoorwill Road or Redbud. They actually had a Red Wing, I think is the road. But anyways, they had to bring the wrecker in there to take him up to the road to bring him back around.
Was that with his brand new box car that he had built at one point?
Yes. Yeah. That brand new box car. Yep. The throttle stuck on it and off the track it went. We didn't even know that he left the track because he was just in the back trying to get it shook down, because I think there was a big race at Madison the next night. So he just came to State Park to shake it down to make sure everything went all right with it. And all of a sudden, the red light come on. We're like, a red light? There's no wreck on the track. What the heck's going on here? We looked off of turn 1, and you could see the trees were moving. We're like, somebody's over there. Who the hell's down there?
Yeah.
And here it was, your grandpa was down there.
Yeah.
And amazingly, the car didn't get wrecked that bad going through all them trees that he raced the next night.
Okay. I always thought that car got tore up pretty good.
Maybe it did.
Okay.
Maybe he raced then the other car, because he had 2 cars then.
Okay.
So maybe he run the other car.
True, yeah.
I know the body was bad, because when he brought it in the pits, the body was all beat to hell. I mean, and it was a brand new body, brand new.
Yeah.
I mean, they had a lot of time stuck into it. And I think, if I remember right, he was talking about maybe taking that car and doing some ASA stuff with it.
Yes, because that I think that must still be his last car that he had, because that's got the ASA center section in it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was. Yep.
Okay.
Because it was a full perimeter car. Because I never figured out how later years he got it to go so fast. I mean, I imagine they cut it up or whatever, but he got it to go fast in the middle of a season. We were at Plover, and he was in the semi, and all of a sudden, and I mean, he was struggling big time.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, just like that thing was a rocket 1 week later. So, and they could have, back then too, those guys probably worked their asses off and probably went to box shop and just busted ass for a whole week. But then after that, the end of that whole year, like I think it was 1990, he was on fire.
Okay.
I mean, because before that he struggled with it, and they parked it. They didn't run it. They ran that other box car that it was super fast that he won a whole bunch of features with. And then that thing sat for a while. And then all of a sudden they got it back out. And I mean, he just took off with it.
And what chassis were you running what was your dad's when you started running it?
It was a Rander car.
It was a Rander car, okay.
It was a car he had bought from Bruce Mueller.
Okay.
Bruce Mueller owned part of it, and I think J.J. Smith owned the other part of it. So when we bought it, we picked it up at B&B Race Engines.
Okay.
It was there, and that's where we got it from. It was a Thunderbird, and it was J.J. Smith's car.
Okay.
So we bought that, and then Dad bought a brand new Wagner in '84 when he bought that, and then so that's the first car I started in.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a Rander car, and back then we'd call Mike a lot of times on the phone, call him up, for help and stuff like that. Back before texting and the internet and all that, we actually called people on a telephone.
Yeah.
And he answered all the time, because a lot of times back then, if you called somewhere, they probably didn't answer, or they might not answer. And it wasn't, I don't recall that they had an answering machine even. That was probably the start of the answering machine thing.
Sure.
Because we'd call Wagner, hey, is our motor done? Pretty soon they just quit answering the phone. Or then you got the answering machine, hey, is our motor done? Is our motor done? All of a sudden you get a call from Carl at 2 a.m. Hey, this is Carl. Your motor's done. We're hot and heavy on it. Come pick it up. It's like 2 a.m. But you had a race a day later or 2 days later. You busted your ass, went down there and got it and put it in.
Yeah. Then obviously you ended up getting the chance to race against your dad then eventually, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then at what year did you kind of break away and get your own car? Or did you inherit the one he had and he got a new one?
Yeah. Well, I inherited his car.
Okay.
Because all of a sudden before the 1990 season started, it was right up until then we were going to split it.
Okay.
Again, I was going to do Plover. He was going to do Wausau. And all of a sudden before the year started, he goes, I don't think I'm going to do it this year. It's all yours. I'm thinking, I'm not financially ready for this. I didn't know I thought we were still going to split it.
Sure.
No, you can do it. And I think Mom was on him to give it up because he was probably getting close to 50 years old, maybe later 40s. She's like, why don't you let the kids do it? You get out of it, whatever. And I think that started to weigh on him a little bit. So and I knew for the last few years of racing, he wasn't having any fun. Probably the last 4 years at that point, he wasn't enjoying it anymore. And they weren't making any money. They were that was a period of where they started losing money.
Yeah.
Where before that, they actually made money doing it. Now all of a sudden you're losing money, you're spending a lot of money. And I think that was just,
Yeah, I never really up until you said that, I never really thought about, for them guys, how weird that probably really was. They came into racing when it was like, hey, we could make a couple bucks, like almost kind of right away when they started, and then went through this really great period in time of racing, and then it just, dropped off, or it flipped, and
big time.
That I never really thought about the kind of the shock that would be for a racer, and growing up as racing's really becoming popular, and then it kind of starts to nosedive.
Yeah, and even around that time, your grandpa, I think in '88, only raced a little bit. He started backing off. He didn't travel to like the Artco shows like he had done before that. Mm-hmm. Pretty soon he was down to just like Plover, maybe sometimes Wausau. Before that, those guys were racing all the time. Mm-hmm. And now they were like, but it just got to be so expensive. The 80s ushered in a lot of that stuff. It was almost, to me, the start of the downward spiral of racing in a lot of ways. But back in the 70s, like my dad could win the semi and win a heat race and, bag $125. So you're talking 1970, and your grandpa was winning the feature. He was making $300. Then he'd get fast time. That paid. Trophy dash paid, the heat races paid, and that's why they actually raced the heat races hard. Where now, if you don't start up front in a heat race, it's like, well, unless you're really hardcore points racing,
right?
But if you're not racing for points, you're like, what's the point,
right? Where
those guys were, hey, that's $5, $5 for this spot, $5 for that spot. They knew the breakdown of the money. Every one of them had a sheet at home of what the payoff was going to be. They knew it, or some guys had it pinned on their wall in their shop. This is what we're going to make tonight. This is how it's going to, you know what I mean? So they were making good money, and they didn't, some guys didn't work. They didn't have to because they made money racing, and they probably didn't have insurance, but I don't know how insurance was back then compared to today. If you don't have insurance, you're, with children and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, but I don't know how they rolled with it back then. I guess I never asked.
Yeah, I'm sure healthcare is a little different back then.
Oh yeah, for sure. So they made good coin. Well, Trickle, all those years didn't have an outside job really.
Yeah. Right.
So when the 80s got ushered in, you could tell it was starting to wear on those guys that they weren't. Jimmy quit. Bach, he got injured, but also he quit racing. So that whole era was starting to go away.
Yeah.
And so then my dad backed out of it. Then I took over in 1990 and ran doing full time. And back then I hated Wausau. I just despised it.
That's really funny to hear. So, yeah, what was it? Was it just because of the rough nature of the racing up there that made you hate it, or just because it took you a long time to get comfortable there?
It just took me a long time to get comfortable there. I just couldn't get a car to set up to feel good there. I couldn't get it to turn decent. Whenever you would get it to turn, it would be twitchy. It wouldn't roll nice, and I was probably overdriving it too. I didn't get the concept of sometimes going slower is faster.
Yeah.
I was only 20 years old, so you're all, I got to manhandle this thing. I got to get all after it, and you're roughing it. And back then we only ran, the caster we ran was probably negative half a degree on the left front and maybe a degree and a half on the right front. Maybe that much on the right front, maybe only a degree, So there wasn't a lot of caster split in there.
Yeah, that way you could drive the thing for a longer race.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, for sure, And we didn't run longer races either. We only run like 25, 30 laps, but those seemed long.
Yeah.
But you felt like you had to muscle it up for all 30 laps or whatever.
So you being someone that has a ton of laps at State Park, what was State Park like back in the 90s compared to, let's say, 5 years ago now? So back in, 2020-ish time frame.
Well, we had the cap on there. So, and then they had just repaved it, I think, in 89. So actually the cap stuck pretty good on the new pavement.
Okay, so they had repaved it around that time. Okay.
But the problem is that a lot of times the pavement would bleed, like fresh asphalt does. In the summertime, and when it would get hot out, it would bleed up that oil. And then the cap on that oil just didn't seem for me, didn't seem like it would work. It was always like so greasy. You could never feel like you get the car locked down. And when you would get it locked down, it would get so tight that it was slow.
Okay.
So it was hard to find a happy balance. Where now, with the Hoosier tire and all the advent of all the bite that's built into these cars now, back then it was smooth. So that was kind of different for a lot of us, is to be on a smooth racetrack.
Right.
At State Park back then, so it was hard to tell when it was sometimes going to get away from you on that greasy asphalt to find the edge of where it was too tight to too loose,
Sure.
Compared to now, it was so rough. But at least if you get bite, you get it locked down,
Yeah.
So it was different for sure.
So then as you kind of took over the reins, started racing, then, weren't sharing the ride with your dad at all. Did you kind of just stick to State Park, Plover, or where did that really kind of progress for you?
I traveled the CWRA then.
Okay, you did the CWRA.
Yep,
okay.
Yep. Probably went full time in that, and 92 was my first year doing it full time. In 90, I dabbled a little bit with going to lacrosse, the Dells. We weren't any longer at Madison. And Madison might have even been closed then. No, Madison, I think, was running the Hoosier tire. It broke off.
Okay.
I don't remember who was promoting it then, but they had started doing their own thing. And then we So then we did the CWRA thing. So then we'd do the Dells some in 1990. 91, I did the Dells a lot more. I think by then, West Salem only had us a handful of times.
Okay.
But then it was Wausau and Plover all the time.
Okay.
And Marshfield didn't pave until 95. But before that, then I would run the CWRA.
Okay.
And Royce was running it then. Royce was a great president. He had his, a good business planner, and knew how to keep it cheap, kept it fun. So he was a good leader of the program,
Yeah. Yeah, and who, as far as drivers, who was still kind of the bigger names running in CWRA at that point?
Your grandpa.
Okay, yeah, because he still had been around running
Yeah.
it, yeah.
We had Al Check was running with us then. Brian ran with us a lot then. Matter of fact, I think Brian was a champion in 1990 when I started. Bobby Weiss from Montello. Rick Wateski ran with us a lot from lacrosse. Matter of fact, he would always win down to the Dells then. He had that place down. Holzhausen ran with us some.
Okay.
I don't think he came to Wausau too much, but he'd still go to like Plover sometimes and the Dells a lot. But then I think around that same time, then he started breaking off into the ASA Artco real heavy.
Okay.
Like your uncle, I think around that, probably the early 90s, Brian started to do the ASA Artco, to branch out,
yep.
Get bigger.
And during those times when running CWRA, obviously when, especially like when Trickle and, Marvin was still running, CWRA was very popular and then still kind of remained popular. What really made the CWRA and, from a driver's standpoint, because I had Royce on here and we talked a lot about it and it was cool to hear from his perspective, but as a driver during that era, what made CWRA then, a really good thing to be a part of?
They had a points fund. So the points fund was great because at the end of the year, you'd get like $1,000.
Okay.
So the more you ran, the more you got back because it probably paid, back then, it might be 75 cents a point.
Okay.
So, you'd have over 1,000 points. So that money would come back to you. You'd get it at the end of the year so then you could pay off the bills that you had charged up through the year, or you could use that to start off for next year.
Okay.
Back then we could charge a tire bill. Now, that's foo-foo. But back then we could charge a tire bill with Albert. And then it worked out good for Albert because then he had money coming throughout the winter. If you paid him, like $200
okay.
in November, $200 in December, $200 in January when he wasn't getting money in. Now he's got some money,
Did Albert ever have to come hunt you down?
No, not me. But I know he'd call sometimes looking for people. Where so-and-so lives? And I would tell him, no, I don't. And then he'd be like, you do too know where he lives. You don't tell me I'll come up there and kick your ass.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd want him hunting me down.
No, back then for sure. Yeah.
Probably bring Vic with him. And,
yeah. Oh, yeah. That was a tough crew. Yeah. When I was a kid, they bounced at a bunch of bars, and you didn't want to. I was little then, but you didn't want those guys were the ones to stay away from.
So if State Park wasn't a favorite of yours, then what track did you enjoy going to the most when you kind of were getting going?
I love Plover.
Okay, love Plover.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, and I still do. I still love Plover. It was back then that was my favorite place to go. I love going there. It was safe. It was wide.
It is a very forgiving place if you respect who you're running around in the track itself.
Absolutely. Yep. And we had good mentors that didn't want to, and plus racing 3 nights a week, we didn't want to tear it up and then have to work on it all night long to go the next day, And back then too, everything wasn't so precision and so spot on. If we tore something up, you might just throw something on. Or I might go down to Larry Lepak's place and get a door. It had Springer's hen house on the side of it or something. Had a big rooster on the side of it and had 41 on it. We would tape over to 41 and tape a 12 on it and rivet it on and go. We could run it. Now it'd be, we might still do it, but it wouldn't be this like it was then.
Yeah. How did you end up with the number 12?
It was my dad's number.
Okay, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, so he was, and my dad started out as 21. And then he switched to 12.
Okay.
So then after that, I was always, 12.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Okay.
And my buddy Jim was 89. He wanted to be 88 because he was a big Tom Reffner fan too. But
Okay.
Tom was 88, so he was 89.
Okay.
Can I take a break quick?
Yeah, we can take a break, no problem. The one thing I was thinking about now was, so at what point, do you remember when you finally got your first super late model win? Because obviously going through those times of when, semis were big, and winning a semi was, was looked at as a, and like a really good accomplishment. You weren't just winning it to get in the feature. Like, hey, you actually beat some really good people to win this semi. Do you remember when you ended up winning your first, A feature?
Yeah, I do. It was at Golden Sands in 1991.
Okay.
I don't remember the exact date, but I remember winning it. And second was Brian.
Okay.
Brian had fast time that night, started in the back. I started second row inside, and Al Check was behind me, and he was a hot dog back then with the Miller car. And he got within like 2 car lengths of me, and we stayed the same distance apart till the very end. And then Brian passed Al on the outside to beat him at the line. But I mean, but every lap, I just made sure that I hit my marks, didn't spin a tire, and I think I made like 2 mistakes the whole race, so Al couldn't get to me. And Al was smooth, so he could get to your bumper and just slide you enough, not spin you out, but you'd think that you were getting loose. And by the time you figured it out, he'd be next to you. So I knew I didn't want to have him get close to me to touch me.
Yeah.
It was, that slick. And so then I won that night. So I remember it. I had the article, and I still got it somewhere. But yeah, that was pretty neat. And then to beat Brian was cool because he was the King Kong back then. I mean, he was winning everything. I mean, every night we'd go to Plover. I think that one year he might have won almost all the features.
Okay.
About a handful of them, So to beat him was like a big deal. Even though I really didn't beat him. I started ahead of him.
Yeah.
But one thing I remember about that night was getting paid. So Prusers ran the racetrack. Terry and Alice ran Golden Sands, and their payoff scale was like it wasn't on a sliding scale, but it paid about like more to qualify good.
Okay.
So when I went up to get paid, I wasn't the top guy on the pay. Even though I won the feature, I was like second or third on the list. Brian was first. So
interesting.
So he had won like $300 and some, where I had only won like 2 something.
Okay.
Because it was only, if you started on the pole and won the feature, it was only like $192. But they paid back, Prusers paid for the top 15 in time, the trophy dash, the heats, all the way down to 5th in the heats. The semi paid all the way down. The feature paid all the way down. They set their scale up off of Norway's pay system, and that's how Norway paid.
Okay.
So,
interesting.
So the winning guy might, let's say like Brian made $350 that night. The lowest guy probably made $200 though.
Okay.
So that was condensed, and the total payout was more than a lot of the tracks. But the guys winning didn't think it was paying that much because they weren't making, $500 to win or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. So, but yes, but it's totally, they probably paid out, let's say like $4,000, where the next track paid out $3,300. So, everybody got a piece of the pie. So it was a pretty good deal.
Okay.
When they ran the track.
Do you, obviously the way payout at local racing, I have no clue if people pay for heat races. I have no clue. I don't think so. I don't really remember. But do you think that do anything as far as like quality of the racing throughout the entire night when heat races, like having it, or even like having qualifying pay well, having that pay structure like that? Did that really do anything for the overall racing product?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
I think so in the heat race because you had something to race for.
Yeah.
Besides the win. Nowadays, so many people race for points. So I guess, if they're points racing, because they're going to get that 1 point or whatever. So, but back in the day, for sure, and even now, I think for some of us that like the money would race more for the money and care less about the points.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get more and more out of the points racing and more trying to logistically, or not logistically, but financially keep it affordable, because it's gotten so out of whack.
Yeah, like nowadays, the starting pay is is definitely the thing I'd always be looking at.
Oh yeah,
right?
When you go to a race and it says it's $10,000 to win, well, great. People are like, you're not going to go down there. It's like, I don't want to discourage you from wanting to go watch me race, and I don't want you guys not to pit for me, but we ain't got a prayer's chance in hell of winning this thing. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Unless like all the clouds line up or something. I mean, to beat a Ty Majeski or a Gabe Summers or Casey Johnson, I mean, with the equipment that they have and the resources that they have,
Yeah, I think it's always good to go to, I think it's good to go to a racetrack and be realistic with yourself and your expectations. Obviously, you always want the greatest outcome and all that, but I think it helps a person's mind a little better. You can go there and be realistic with yourself too.
Yeah, you can only lie to yourself so much, right? You know what I mean? I mean, some people can do it all the time. I don't know how they do it.
Hey, this ain't my night, or this ain't my track. You just you kind of got to be realistic with it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, you always want to have that attitude that you can get it done, but sometimes it's just not going to happen. Yeah. Sometimes you're fighting City Hall. There's the politics of it. Mm-hmm. The unsightly thing about racing.
Yep.
And I tell some people, sometimes some people that are fans of racing, I tell them, stay a fan. Don't get any more involved in it than you have to. Don't take on like the racetrack director job, because when you pull back the curtain, you might not like what you see behind the curtain. And I've seen it happen a lot through the years, where these people were super fans. They pull the curtain back, take on a bigger role because they love it so much that it kills them. And then they quit coming. You don't see them at a racetrack. You don't see them anywhere. They just like fall off the face of the earth. And it's too bad, because they were really good fans, but once they see some of the, they get hollered at by a race driver.
Sure.
They're done. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's no longer what it was for them. It's not fun, and yeah,
it's not a getaway. It's not, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's actually now in today's age with social media and all that good fun stuff. That's the thing. Every time I see whining or someone just having some dumb post out there, that's like the first thing I go to is I'm like, someone's out there reading this that just loves going to the races, and they're like, God, look at these guys complaining about this or that, and it's like, whether it's right or wrong, it's like, just go be a man and go talk about it to each other in person, or whatever the case may be.
Absolutely.
Go to the tavern after, go to Leo's after and talk about it.
Right. I just saw a post the other day about somebody complaining about Friday night. It's like, come on. Typically it's the ones complaining that are some of the worst ones, or the worst violators. It's like, geez. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something.
Yeah, it's the world we live in, though, too. I mean, me and Margot try to balance that too. It's like, well, but it's not just the racing thing. It's the world. It's how it is today. We have to accept it.
Right.
We can't turn it back, even though we'd like to have it back to when her dad raced and my dad raced, like those glory years. But they're not coming back. You could try. You could try to emulate that. But getting back to the boxing thing, I'd like to see boxing back to the Ali, Frazier fights, stuff like that. It's not going to happen.
Are you a Jake Paul fan?
Little bit, yeah.
He's exciting.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, and I like some of the. I don't watch much of the MMA stuff, but I like their concept, and I like the atmosphere of it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't watch a whole lot of UFC fights, but I like the UFC. I like catching a lot of the highlights. At some point when they got a big fight going on, I wouldn't mind pay-per-viewing it. And yeah, that's kind of fun. Now going back to your first win, the one thing I wanted to comment on too that you had mentioned was when you said Alan Check could get up to you, and it almost feel like you yourself were getting loose versus him getting into you. That was one thing that my grandpa always said about Trickle. He goes, the one thing about Dick is, he's like, you always would think yourself, you're just getting loose on your own, because he would finesse you so much, passing you. And I think that's so cool, because it does, as a racer, it takes so much craft to do that, not just smack you out of the way and on entry or an exit and then drive by you.
Absolutely, yeah. Finesse is the word, and Trickle, I watched him do it a million times. I mean, he was probably the best at it. I mean, yeah, Marv would tell me some stories too. I think he told me one time at Kaukauna that happened to him with Dick. He was racing for the lead, and next thing you know, Marv thinks he's going to win this thing, and next thing you know, Dick sneaks through there, and here he went and, kind of boogered him up a little bit, but he didn't know what happened,
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it happened, and it was over, and he wasn't too happy about it.
Yeah, and I imagine it was some of those times too, like, they may not have had it on camera, so it's not like you can go back and watch the highlights and look exactly what happened, and you're just kind of left wondering, like, how did he end up doing that,
Well, you know how Dick would tell it, like, well, you got a little kind of, how
He'd probably let you think you'd did it on your own, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You got a little loose and I snuck in there.
He could talk to Eskimos in the ice cubes. I mean, he was a smoothie,
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Now, when you won that first race at Plover, up until that point, were you starting to think like, hey, I'm really, really getting the hang of this? Or once you got that first win, it was like, all right, turning point. Like, I'm feeling pretty good about what I got going on here. Thank you for listening in to Speed and Grease. If you're a returning listener, I appreciate you tuning into another episode. And if it was your first time tuning into the show, I hope you enjoyed it and want to keep coming back for more. And if you haven't already, make sure you head on over to Facebook, Instagram, like and follow us on one of those platforms wherever you prefer, even on X as well. And if you watch a lot of stuff on YouTube, make sure you head on over to YouTube, subscribe to our channel there to stay up to date on everything. And also, if you want, give us a rating and review over on Spotify or Apple Podcasts as well. Thank you again for tuning in. I really appreciate it, and we'll catch you in the next one.